Uh, Good evening, everyone.
Hi, people. Good evening, all of you.
So,
How is the Josh?
finally done and dusted. The cat is done. We are dusted. But yeah. So, how's the paper? पेपर तो अच्छा था, क्वालिटी भी सही थी, प्रिंटिंग बढ़िया हुई थी. How's the paper? Any first thoughts, impressions? क्या समझ आया, क्या नहीं आया? जी. अरे, you can use the chat box to write like usual. जी, any thoughts on the paper? आसान था, मुश्किल था? Anyways, see, again, the first things first, जैसे expected था वैसे ही था. अरे वो तो मैं पहले बता ही दिया था ना. LR1 question was easy to moderate. Okay. I think the most important thing to understand here was at the end of the day, the important thing is कि कितने marks पे क्या percentile आएगी. So one thing that you have to understand is because the overall score decreases, right? Last year the paper was of 300 marks. Last year it was 228. This year it comes down to 198. Because of that, well, the simple सी बात है, if you're scoring someone out of 10 marks versus if you're scoring someone out of 20 marks, marks में difference ज़्यादा होगा, and therefore because total कम है, तो the difference in marks for percentiles will also decrease, right? Likely to decrease rather. तो जैसे if you attempted questions जो risk ले रहे थे वो गलत हो जाएंगे, every mark becomes important and you'll see a big jump in percentile for maybe 1.5-2 questions में you'll see a decent jump in percentile. At least 90 के ऊपर तो ये definitely होगा, right? 90 to 97 वाली range में. Every mark being important, number one. Secondly, as was expected across the board, 2/3 क्वेश्चन हो जाएंगे, 66 क्वेश्चंस के आसपास होंगे. उसी लाइंस पे आया था. I am Ahmedabad said we'll be decreasing questions across the sections. That also happened. Once you opened your once you logged in, you would have seen that number of questions were not specified, and you came to know the questions only when you started the paper. 24, 20, 22 were the questions across the sets. Unlike last year, I think another thing that did happen was the level of difficulty for all the three papers was comparable. Last year what had happened was slot 1 we thought was a lot easier as compared to slot 3. Slot 3 आते थे LRDI में blood bath हो गया था, and therefore the first impressions definitely were that slot 1 is very easy, slot 2 was difficult, and slot 3 was very, very difficult. But when the scores came out, scaling utni zyada nahi hui thi, because again, when you look at 70,000 students sitting for each slot, the averages kind of they kind of balance out. इस बार अच्छी बात ये थी कि across the board the paper was similar. I think slot 1 and slot 2 were definitely very, very comparable. Slot 3 में ठीक है, एक सेक्शन आसान हो गया था, बाकी दो थोड़े डिफिकल्ट हो गए थे. But overall बहुत बड़ा score difference I think we don't think will happen. Again, तो मतलब वही है जो raw scores है उसके आसपास.
I think there was marginal difference between in the difficulty levels.
No, मतलब I am harping on the word marginal. Sir said मैं marginal पकड़ रहा हूँ, तो वो मेरा थॉट है. और अगर ओवरऑल स्कोर्स की बात करेंगे तो जो लास्ट ईयर स्कोर्स पे परसेंटाइल था, आई थिंक दैट विल होल्ड, राइट? बिकॉज देखो, सिंस लास्ट ईयर we came to know about the pattern of the exam about a month in advance. उतना preparation time नहीं था. But in our cases, we had ample time and we had been preparing for that 66 to 70 question sort of a paper for a good amount of time. So that tends to increase marks. Because the overall marks decreased, therefore, because total marks कम है तो जो marks आएंगे वो भी थोड़े कम हो जाता है. तो एक positive, एक negative influence, I think would cancel out each other, and therefore if as a thumb rule I have to say what is the score in percentile that you should expect, last year scores in percentiles should ideally hold. At least that is what the first impression definitely is. In a few days the mark sheets will be out, or at least the answer sheets will be out. That will be a very good that will be the best indicator actually, and a clearer picture will emerge. As of now, I think what we went through, just go through slot wise as to what the feedback has been, what our experience was. So one by one, slot 1, I think let's start with English. Start taking
Yes.
over. So this
So
is
people, all of you can see here, I think it is clearly visible to all of you, right? So this is for slot 1. And we have put the expected percentile and cutoffs. And as you see here, that at a score of 42, 42, somewhere in between that, you should be able to get a score of 99 percentile in VARC. Now that might sound a little on the higher side, but let me analyze the VARC section of the first slot, and then you will understand why we have come to this figure. One major difference, I think, was in the number of VA questions. So most of you in the mocks, you were, I think, having around 25% of VA questions. So if there were 22 questions, I think you had 6 VA questions. All the other 16 were from RCs. What happened in the exam, 1/3 of the questions in the VARC section came from VA. Now that is a higher proportion than what we are used to. And those questions were more on the slightly easier side. I won't say they were very easy, but if you look at the paragraph summary question of the first slot and the parajumbles, they were definitely way easier than what you had encountered in the previous papers. The first thing. The second is the odd one out. The odd one out was slightly more on the moderate side because you could not make out the right answer very convincingly. That's why what I believe is that people who would have done well because of the VA attempts. Because the VA questions were much more doable than the RCE questions. So people who did not like VA or who had developed a sort of aversion to VA, I think they would have to score very well in the RCs. And if you come to the RCs, we had 4 RCs, 16 questions. So the number of questions from the RC were a bit on the lower side. And secondly, 2 RCs were difficult to read. When I say difficult to read, it basically means that it was not so tangible as the other 2 RCs were. So if I recollect correctly, there was one RC on the history of tea drinking and how tea as a drink has lots of advantages. That is what the author discussing. And I think 2 questions were completely factual in nature. Which of the following is true as per the passage, or the cause behind something except? So you just had to scan for the information, and the one that is not there was the right answer. So 2 questions very easy, even three were very easy. There was one inference question in the T passage. That was slightly, I felt that could have taken time. Otherwise, T passage was the easiest one. You could have got all 4 correct, or maybe at least 3 out of 4 correct. Coming to the other easy RC in that was the RC which had some cuttlefish. I did not check that RC very well, but people told me that RC was very easy, or doable. So you can say that if you have taken those 2 RCs, so 4 plus 4, 8 questions, you could have got at least 7 or maybe 8 all correct. So you can get 7 questions from there. And from the VA part, at least 50% questions were gettable. So 7 questions there plus 4 here, 11 questions were very much gettable. And that's why I would say that what we have put here is 90 percentile. So when we say 11 questions were gettable, not all of you will get 11 exactly. But I think for this first slot, 90 percentile would be somewhere around 25. It could be slightly on the higher side or on the lower side. But I think 25, 24 will definitely get you 90 percentile. And 30 to 35 should get you 95. And I think as we told, 40, 42 should get you 99 percentile. 2 RCs in the first slot were difficult. Difficult to read. The questions were not so easy. The options were very close. So if you have missed those 2 RCs and you have wasted your time on the other 2 RCs and you have not done VA properly, I think you are in trouble. But if you have got the VA questions and you have got the 2 easy RCs, I think even if your attempt is 15, you are very much on course of scoring around 95 percentile, I think. This is about slot 1 VARC. Rahul sir?
Yeah, again, I hate to say this, but during our one-to-one analysis, I had been very sure about the fact that you have to be good at the VA part. वो short questions होते हैं. So that happened. But anyways, as an outsider, my feeling of English was, compared to last year, the paper was difficult because again, मेरे को English नहीं आती वाली बात है, तो समझ तो कुछ आता नहीं, मार्क ही करना होता है. But I think short questions नहीं थे. The vibe was not as if I, being confident about too many questions. Verbal में yeah, there were maybe 3 or 4 questions where you could be sure that you would get the answer right. Otherwise, वो feel उतना strong नहीं था. As far as LRDI is concerned, again, on the face of it, 4 sets, 40 minutes, 10 minutes per set, बहुत प्यारा इक्वेशन बैठ रहा था. But apart from in the first set, जो data interpretation question था based on the bar chart, which obviously was very easy. So anyone who picked that up to start would have had a very good start. Then on, you could have done any one of the 6 question sets. The one on friends and acquaintances or the other one जहाँ पे 18 lectures were to be arranged. उनमें से कोई एक उठा के किया जा सकता था, which would have meant you could have taken an attempt to 10 and then you look at individual questions from the remaining sets. हर set में अच्छी बात ये थी, apart from the DI set जो मेरे ख्याल से all the 4 should have been attempted, for all the rest of the sets, even if you're solving half of the problem, you would be able to attempt 2-3 questions, right? So anyone who was able to do that would have probably gotten a good attempt. Overall, I think देखो थोड़ी बहुत गलतियां हो जाती हैं, and therefore an attempt of about 10 to 12 questions would be good enough to get your 99 percentile. That is 2 sets done completely correctly, या फिर 1 set and 2-3 questions here and there. Again, for someone who got stuck, and this happened with a lot of students, slot 1 में उतना clear नहीं था, slot 2, slot 3 आते हुए बहुत clear हो गया कि हुआ है बहुतों के साथ. So even if you're getting say 6 odd questions correct, एक set मेरा पूरा हो गया जो basic DI था, उसके बाद मैंने 1-2 question किए, तो करीब 6-7 question के आसपास 90 percentile मेरे ख्याल से touch हो जाएगी. As far as maths was concerned, I thought maths was of the 3 the easiest section, because there were a lot of straightforward questions.
And I think the easiest section, the easiest quant of all the 3 slots was the first slot. Am I correct?
Maybe मतलब ठीक है, वो मेरी वाली तो मुझे हमेशा टफ ही लगती है, तो वो अलग बात है, बट मैंने ये दिया था, so it was genuinely easy. मतलब there were a lot of straightforward questions, and therefore in this section, unlike the last 3 years where English marks were actually the highest for every percentile, ये मैंने कई बार क्लास में ही बोला है, I've shared with you the marks as well. I think this could be a paper where the maths scores could be higher, definitely than the LRDI scores, but also maybe the English scores. I mean, that was the level of difficulty. So getting up to 15-16 questions would not be very difficult, in the sense that for a very high percentile of 99, and about 10-11 questions should ensure that you clear the 90 percentile. So what we are trying to put across here is the 90 percentile in English might actually be at a lower score than math. The good thing was math was dominated by arithmetic, something that we have been stressing on. Almost 10 odd questions out of 22 were arithmetic questions and direct application questions as well. जो ज्योमेट्री के फर्स्ट सेट में क्वेश्चन थे हेक्सागन पे बेस्ड थे, एक राइट एंगल ट्रायंगल पे इन सर्कल बेस्ड था. सो आई थिंक थिंग्स दैट यू वुड हैव सीन इन द मे बी द फर्स्ट क्लास शीट्स आल्सो, वहां से भी काफी क्वेश्चंस मैच हो जाते हैं, राइट? In the algebra thing also, the questions that were there were expected questions. They were not questions जहाँ पे बहुत ज्यादा आपको सोचना है. For example, mod के अंदर quadratic था. Even if you just draw the graph of that quadratic, you would easily see the value that you're looking for, right? So time could have been saved. But again, 15 odd questions net correct should ensure 99 percentile, and therefore overall the scores that we're looking at are about 100, like last year for a 99 percentile. And for the first slot people, a score of about 70 should ensure the 90 overall percentile is the take that we have for slot 1, right? Going on to slot 2 then. Slot 2. Yes, so this is slot 2.
Yes. So now we come to slot 2, and the good thing is that the VRC distribution and the difficulty of slot 2 was very similar to slot 1. In fact, the same distribution of VA questions and the same distribution of the RC passages. So as I told you, for the slot 1, for slot 1 we had 2 passages difficult to read with questions having very close choices, and 2 passages were easy to read and questions very much doable. Same thing happened in slot 2 in VARC, that the VA questions, 50% of the questions were doable, in the sense you could have got them definitely correct. So out of 8 VA questions, we had 3 from para summary, 3 from para jumbles, and 2 from odd one out. So that comes to 8. The para summary 2 were easy, the para jumbles 1 was very easy, and 1 odd one out was easy. The other 4 VA questions in all were slightly on the moderate side, not on the difficult side. So it's quite possible that someone who attempts all the VA question can get around 4, 5, or maybe 6 even correct. That would be a big boost to his overall tally. Coming to the RC's part now. So what I got the feedback from the students was that there was one RC which was discussing with some linguistics and monolingual something. People say that RC could have been completed in almost 7 to 8 minutes, less than 7 to 8 minutes. So that was a very, very easy RC, the linguistic something. And the difficult RC was one on psychology and the other was on nationalism. So people said that the language made it difficult. So again, we come back to the same age-old criteria with which we select RCs. We say that when something is difficult to read and not so easy to understand, the questions may not be very much within grip. And that's the reason why, again, you had two RCs, difficult to read with slightly difficult or moderate to difficult questions. The other two RCs were very easy. So in terms of difficulty, I would say that the slot 2 VARC and slot 1 VARC will have similar cutoff as we show here. So we have gone similar scores. We have 40, 42 in and slot 3 पे आ गया ना, हाँ 2 पे, तो 40, 42, 30 to 35 and 25, 27, more or less the same.
ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है बार-बार? Okay.
ठीक है, and then coming to LRDI QA. Sir.
Okay, so the analysis for LRD and QA is based on the feedback that we have from students. I think question by question में अगर आप slot 1 slot 2 को match करना, काफी similarity थी. वो DI का एक section आसान था, 6 4 जो बचे थे, if you were able to even pick one of them and solve them, वो हो जा रहा था एक में फंसता है. All of them are mostly time taking questions apart from the DI one, and therefore scores would be very, very similar. Maths I think was a little difficult in the second slot as compared to the first slot. First slot वाले questions काफी similar वो लगे थे. So I think someone has put a question saying तुक्के मार के आने पर पास होने के chances कितने हैं? High risk high gain होता है. And जैसा मैंने शुरू में कहा, देखो, if the total marks are more, right? For example, in a 300 mark paper, थोड़ा chances लिए जा सकते हैं because वेरिएशन काफी होता है, ठीक है. तो अगर एक आध गलत भी होगा उतना बड़ा रिस्क नहीं है. इन अ पेपर टोटल मार्क्स आर लेसर, 200 मार्कर है, 198 मार्कर है ये. यहाँ पे एक दो क्वेश्चन गलत भी होंगे तो उसपे परसेंटाइल का वेरिएशन काफी बड़ा हो जाएगा, राइट. सो दिस इज नॉट अ पेपर वेयर आई वुड सजेस्ट यू टू टेक अननेसेसरी रिस्क. और देखो ओवरऑल स्कोर जी हम बात करें, वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट 60-65 मार्क्स, विच अबाउट 20 क्वेश्चंस आउट ऑफ 66. So again, not something that is advisable. Yeah. So coming back to math, the QA section, here again arithmetic dominated, standard questions from algebra, geometry as well. एक दो question थे geometry में जो शायद थोड़े application based थे, but yes, what did happen in this set was questions were calculative in nature and therefore time consuming, and therefore the overall attempt would go down by maybe a couple of questions. Therefore, all I'm saying is the variation in slot 1, slot 2 should not be very big, and therefore we've just corrected this by about a question and a half overall, right? जहाँ पे जो difference है वो QA में दिखना चाहिए average scores में, and therefore very similar scores as compared to slot 1 as far as overall scores and percentiles are concerned, right? Again, anyone who has been doing even the class sheets for the math section would have been able to attempt at least 7-8 questions. अगर वो सारी कर रखी हैं, उसमें से direct similar questions थे जो कि exam में which could have been done, right? Moving on to slot 3, the slide that keeps propping up. So slot 3 was probably the set. Again, slot 3 as it is, this is what we're talking about as well, is the most difficult slot to give because you've had the entire day where you've listened to a lot of things as to ye ho raha hai, wo ho raha hai. So you are kind of exhausted and then you get into the paper mode. जो 2 घंटा paper देते हो. So as it is psychologically, I think it is a bit heavy, but even section wise, I think there was variation. So अगर English की बात करेंगे तो
so coming to the English section, फर्क ये है ना कि if you look at the earlier slides, what we had done at 90, we had put around 40, 42, 43, 99 percentile. We have brought this down by around 2 to 3 marks in the VARC section for the third slot. The reason is that as per people's feedback, in the third slot, the VA was not that easy as we had seen for the earlier 2 slots. People said that no, they were tricky. So, for example, they said that in Parajumble, it was not easy for them to create a link quickly. And also in the paragraph summary, the questions had close choices. I mean, though they were short options, they were very close. So what I told you was that in the earlier 2 slots, you could get 50% of the VA questions correct. But in this slot, it may not be the case. Many people might have left many questions. So if we could have done 50% questions correct, at least in the first two slots, here I think 2-3 questions was very much possible. So we bring that down by one question. That's the reason why. And the RCs were on the difficult side, as we had seen in the first two slots. Two RCs were easy. One was easy, one more moderate, and two were difficult to moderate. So same here for this slot also, the RCs were more on the difficult side. Two RCs were difficult to read, challenging, very close choices. And the other two RCs did not have plenty of easy questions as we saw in the first two slots. So more on the easy to moderate side, two RCs, and two RCs difficult to moderate side. So what I felt was that in VA, in the first two slot, people could have got one more question correct. That's why 50% questions in VA they could have got correct. In the RCs, if people could have managed around 7 to 8 questions correct in the first two slots, here that may not be the case. So again, a difference of 2 questions, I think. That's why we have brought down the overall cutoff for 99 by at least 3 marks on the average side. So that's what we're expecting in VARC. 29-32 marks. 29-32 marks, 95 percentile, and 21-24 is 90 percentile. So this VARC slot 3 is turning out to be very similar to last year's VARC slot 1, which was the most difficult. So if you look at CAT 20 paper, people said that slot 1 VARC was most difficult, and it really turned out to be so because the scaling was done and we got to know from that. Same thing you can expect here in slot 3. So similar score, similar percentile. Slot 1 easier, slot 3 difficult, slot 1, slot 2 difficulty almost on par.
Yeah, LRDI changed. I think slot 3 gotten better feedback than slot 1 and slot 2. The graph question was definitely doable. You could have attempted a 6 marker as well and then looked at a couple of questions here and there, right? Again, 3 pure sets ho jaye, that seemed difficult, but yes, definitely 2.5 was something that could have been looked in the LRDA section compared to 1 and 2. Again, the type of questions or the categorization of questions was very, very similar. The concepts being checked were very similar, and but again, here probably you could have gone up to 2.5 odd sets. As far as maths is concerned, maths here was difficult in terms of topics, in terms of concepts, very similar, but questions here were a little time taking. You had to sit down and solve the questions, and therefore the overall attempt should decrease, right? So we're predicting a correction in the VARC and QA marks, so they are likely to decrease. LRDI marks might be a little higher, and therefore you in slot 3 you could actually see very similar scores for all the 3 sections. This is a very strong likelihood. Overall, I think the marks for the percentiles in slot 3 would be the lowest, almost a difference of about 10 odd percentage as compared to slot 1 versus slot 3. So slot 1 marks could be almost 10% other raw scores. Voice is echoing.
Is it for everyone? I think only for Pulkit, because sometimes the problem might be on Pulkit's end. So what about others? बाकी लोगों को सही लग रहा है क्या आवाज?
It's fine.
So I think Pulkit,
just check your connection.
Just
Great,
check
thank
your
you.
connection.
तो almost 10% का फर्क पड़ सकता है इसमें. Also, see, ठीक है, analysis is there, all of the things are there. एक मेरा पर्सनल इसमें यह है कि I think LRDI and QA marks will hold, because almost everyone who's been giving feedback, the students are sure about their attempts in LRDI and QA. English section काफी tricky था. All the options were very, very close. Even if you look at the para summaries, एक word पे. So if there are 4 aspects in the paragraph, every aspect was changed for the 4 options, and therefore this could vary. Matlab, ठीक है, we've done our best to come up with these marks,
right,
but you could see a variation here. Overall, I think the scores should hold, and mostly that is what happened in the day today, right? Again, beyond this, I think there is not too much to be had from analyzing what I did not did, what was my best attempt, what is my worst attempt, because frankly यार देखो पता नहीं है, प्रेशर में हम कुछ और करते हैं, बाहर आके कुछ और याद रह जाता है. So wait up for the next 3-4 days, you'll have a very good idea. You will get your answer, the answer key and your attempt sheet. You'll have an idea of the scores, and that is the time when we should get into what is the exact score and what to expect, right? So again, just chill out. Going forward, क्या प्लान है अब? Going forward, 5th को है IIFT, a very good college. Most of you would have filled that college as well. So as far as CAT is concerned, the discussion should ideally stop here and now. You look at, you've done what you've done, wait for the next 3-4 days, invest them in preparing for IIFT. By the time you hit IIFT, the score sheet will be out. Uske baad, whatever analysis has to be done, that would be done at the right time.
That would be the real analysis.
Yes.
अभी तो खाली everyone is basically making some sort of estimation.
इंग्लिश में तो मेरे को भी लग रहा है मेरे सारे सही हैं यार. होंगे तो ठीक, तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, राइट? IIFT पे फोकस किया जाए. Students who are waiting to fill forms, I think it is a very good time. अगर that form open है तो भरा जा सकता है. I think भर देना चाहिए rather. And beyond that, after 5th जो है, मतलब आज 20th हो गई, so 20th से 5th तक का plan is mostly IIFT. Yeah. Approximately what date will answer की? Last year it happened in 3 days. पुलकित 3 दिन में आ गई.
I think Wednesday को check करो, Wednesday morning या Thursday max. So we should have the. मैं इस पे सर से बहुत strongly disagree करता हूँ. मैं तो बोल रहा हूँ अगर आपने IIFT भरा हुआ है तो Friday Saturday तो करने की जरूरत ही नहीं. हाँ, मतलब शांति से बैठो यार, IIFT की तैयारी करो, Saturday को देख लेना, IIFT से आके देख लेना क्या फर्क पड़ जाएगा. नंबर थोड़ी चेंज हो जाएंगे अपने. और अगर कोई रिप्रेजेंटेशन है, कोई चेंज है, वो तो हम लोग बताएंगे, ग्रुप पे डालेंगे कि these are the changes that you should go for, right? I think just hold your guns, focus on IIFT right now. अगर IIFT नहीं भरा है तो जैसे ही आते देख लेना. As sir said, Wednesday Thursday should be the right time to check, right? इसके अलावा starting tomorrow, right? So 6 to 8 slot जो उसको अगले 3 दिन के लिए बुक कर लो. We'll be having GK IIFT classes. Again, the objective of these classes would be question answer based, so that कुछ questions hit हो जाए in the IIFT paper, right? Tomorrow at 6, me and Harish sir will join, and we'll just talk about again PDP तो बात की बात है, but basically the IIFT paper, and we'll start off with the IIFT classes. So make sure you attend those classes. 5th के बाद we get into the PDP and the DM decision making. So by this time you would have your score, तो एक idea लग जाएगा कितनी percentile आ रही है, what are the colleges we are targeting, so we can start off with the PDP program, or at least the basics of that PDP, and after 5th we'll be starting with the DM decision making for that as well, right? Meanwhile, of course, all of us are there as usual. तो कोई भी बात है वो बता देना. So if anything specific has to be done, that can be done. That is the plan. Going forward from there on in, after 6th, we'll be starting with the GDPI program, where we'll be looking at about this sort of about 25 odd hours of GDPI, जहाँ पे GD cases वगैरह की practice करेंगे, and we'll be doing live interviews. This part, what we'll also be doing, we'll be recording an interview for you, so you will have better feedback as far as the interviews that happen, right? So for any information regarding this, you can get in touch with Saurabh, right? I'll also share the number on the chat box. If Saurabh, you can do it, it will be really nice, right? So if any details you want, you can get in touch with us on this number, so that can be planned. So मतलब output इसका ये है, आज अभी जो हम कर रहे हैं इसका output majorly ये है. Shifa, NMAT, if you log into your test वाला ID, test जो अपना mocks वाला ID है, you'll see there are NMAT mocks there. So NMAT mock दे दे, and you can get in touch with us regarding specific help that you need. ठीक है? NMAT scores have started coming out. So मतलब वही last year जैसे scores दिख रहे हैं अभी तो. So I think eventually cutoffs भी उस range में आएंगे if you are trying to look at what you should attempt. The output that I want you to take from today is, I think, एक ये. Number 1, scores should hold like last year. So about 100 should mean a 99 percentile, 69, 70 should mean a similar.
Yes. So a 90 percentile. Slot 3 scores would ideally be lower than the slot 1 scores. So slot 1 slot 2 being similar, slot 3 थोड़ा कम होगा because मैथ्स और इंग्लिश दोनों ही थोड़े डिफिकल्ट थे. LRDI मार्जिनली इजी था, बट ओवरऑल LRDI का जो डिफिकल्टी लेवल था, इट वाज सिमिलर टू द प्रीवियस ईयर वाला थिंग, राइट. अगर 20 और 21 के पेपर को कंपेयर करना हो, आई थिंक इंग्लिश वाज सिमिलर, LRDI स्लाइटली मोर डिफिकल्ट. स्लॉट 1 से कंपेयर करो बिकॉज स्लॉट 3 लास्ट ईयर का अलग ही लेवल पे था. मैथ्स वाज अ लॉट इजियर, राइट. सो ओवरऑल द स्कोर शुड होल्ड लाइक लास्ट ईयर. पॉइंट नंबर 1. पॉइंट नंबर 2, कैट हो गया, उसका काम आज डन है. फॉर द नेक्स्ट 3-4 days, 5 days, focus on your IFT paper or the NMAT paper as the case may be. And
I have one suggestion. You can download all the previous past 7-8 years IFT paper, because nothing is better than solving the past year papers. Of course, if you have mocks, that also can be used. You can use the past years as reference for preparation, and you can solve the real-time mocks so that you get to know where you stand. So just try to understand the paper structure, because if you look at IFT, there are sectional cutoff, and then there is a VA and RC separate section. The overall section cutoff is on the lower side, usually lower than CAT, and you can always maximize in the RC section because the RC questions are more straightforward. So just plan out a strategy as to what exactly you would be doing in the paper to maximize your score. Because in IFT, the challenge is not in clearing the cutoff. The challenge is in maximizing the score. So keep that in mind. And I think IFT is a good college.
Or another thing that you have to understand is IFT, NMAT, SNAP, ZAT, these are colleges or exams where you will get a final goal from the college based on your written score, right? IIM कॉल करेगा प्रोफाइल देख के, बट ये जो बच्चे को जो कॉलेजेस हैं ये आपको कॉल करेंगे आपके रिटन स्कोर पे. तो इन ये एग्जाम्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. क्लियर द रिटन स्कोर, यू हैव एन इंटरव्यू कॉल, देन इट इज अप टू यू टू कन्वर्ट, राइट. Shragar, similar strategy for SNAP as well. Do give your mock and get in touch with me, right? Because SNAP does not have GK, तो अलग से सच कुछ बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है जो करना है. मॉक दे, get in touch with me, तो आगे उसको प्लान कर सकेंगे. ठीक है जी. I think that is mostly what we had from our side today. दो takeaways जो important है वो बता दिए. Anything that you'd want to discuss or talk about? जी. Great then. Thank you very much. Take. I'll see you tomorrow about 6 p.m. and we get started with the IFT thing and PDP then on. All right. Chaliye. Thank you very much. You take care of yourself. And as usual, koi bhi baat hogi, just drop in a message. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.